So, very much welcome to you all today. I'm very excited about this webinar, which has been in the planning for some months now. I would like to welcome you to another Pacific WASH webinar. We are today talking about gender equality inclusion in water and sanitation workplaces, looking at new guidance and tools for Pacific water utilities, and very pleased to be partnering today with, of course, Asian Development Bank, with Pacific Water and Waste Association, Solomon Water, Water Authority of Fiji, and University of Technology, Sydney Institute for Sustainable Futures. First of all, let me acknowledge that I'm joining from the traditional lands of the Yagara and Turrbal people of Meanjin in Brisbane, Australia. I would like to take this chance to acknowledge their leaders past, present, and emerging. To introduce myself, I'm Bronwyn Powell. I'm the team leader and WASH advisor on the Pacific WASH Technical Assistance and also a WASH specialist at International Water Centre at Griffith University. I'm really excited today for this Pacific WASH series, and that we're able to host this session on gender and social inclusion on water and sanitation workplaces. I want to acknowledge the leadership initiative from Melita Grant at Institute for Sustainable Futures for bringing this session together and partnering with us through this technical assistance project with ADB and PWWA. It's an excellent partnership and really good to be able to work on this together, see what the progress is, and look to the future about where there's still room for improvement, and to also to share and encourage peer-to-peer learning across utilities in the Pacific. So as you all know, this series is jointly hosted by PWWA, and we're very happy that Lucia is today here. The CEO of PWWA is able to present on the latest benchmarking and findings of the gender equality in Pacific utilities. But first, I would like to introduce and invite our Pacific Director General, Leah Gutierrez from ADB, to give a welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bronwyn, and good afternoon, good evening, and good day to you all. So welcome to the number 13 or 13th ADB and PWWA Pacific WASH webinar series. We started this series in November 2020 as part of ADB's WASH support to the Pacific Island countries during the COVID-19 pandemic. We have covered a wide range of webinar topics during this time, from chlorination to water safety planning. In August 2021, the WASH webinar series looked at how water utilities can improve their gender mainstreaming efforts. ADB is committed to improving gender equality through gender-inclusive project designs in at least 75% of operations by 2030. This is in fact our operational priority under Strategy 2030 to accelerate progress in gender equality. Today, we will explore gender and social inclusion in Pacific WASH workplaces more deeply. There is a wide variety of ways in which utilities can support women and other marginalized groups, such as people with disabilities. Today, our Pacific colleagues will share their success stories in implementing practical steps to improve gender equality and social inclusion, both within the workplaces and in the services and programs they provide. These efforts are crucial because in the home, women and girls are primarily responsible for managing water, hygiene, and sanitation. Yet, women make up less than 1 in 5 people working at Pacific Water Utilities. Most are in administrative and management positions, and just 1 in 10 work as engineers. 1/3 of water utilities in the Pacific have no female engineers at all. Our partners for this webinar, the Institute for Sustainable Futures and the Water for Women Fund, will also showcase their new Inclusive WASH Workplaces database that can help us all identify what actions to take next to shape a more inclusive WASH workplace. As always, our webinars are aimed at supporting peer-to-peer learning, as Bronwyn has said, and we encourage you all to reach out to us in ADB or the speakers during and after this event for more information and support. So I thank you for attending today's seminar, and I encourage you to give us feedback on the types of topics you would like us to present in the future. So let us all listen and participate and share in the knowledge that we have. Thank you and see you all in the next event. Over to you, Bronwyn.
Thank you so much, Leah. Wonderful. Well, we'll keep moving and I can provide a bit of an overview. Just in terms of housekeeping though, just some things to make sure that our webinar runs smoothly today. If you could just keep your mic off, most people have done so already, while the presenters are speaking, that makes it much easier for everyone to hear. You can raise your hand, if your virtual hand, if you'd like to speak. And also, please do add to the chat box at any time with comments, with questions, things you'd like to follow up with the presenters later on. Anything as we go. We do want to make this session as participatory as possible, and we do have time for question and answer and discussion scheduled in our program. There will also be a recording made of this, and the recording will be available on YouTube as well as the slides, so that will all be available afterwards. Our schedule today, you can see moving forward, we have Lucia Sefal Liao, who's a CEO of PWA, will start us off with a presentation. Then we're very lucky today to have representation from 2 Pacific water utilities to talk about their gender action plans and progress. So first being Manasa Tusulu from Water Authority Fiji. We then will hand over to Melita Grant, who will introduce us to the Inclusive WASH Workplaces research and also some tools that utilities can use to progress this agenda in their own utility. Then we'll also invite Michelle Maleao to provide an industry perspective from Solomon Water. And then, as I mentioned, hopefully we'll have time for some discussion and questions and answer towards the end. I think I've introduced all of us now, so I will now invite Lucia Sefo-Liao to present. So Lucia is the CEO of PWA and has been since 2016. She's previously held a number of senior roles in the Samoan government in the Ministry of Revenue, Ministry of Finance, and she was also Deputy Secretary of the Ministry of Prime Minister and Cabinet. So she has a wealth of experience and we're very grateful for her participation and insights into the progress across the Pacific utilities, and also very excited this is the first time this benchmarking data is being presented publicly. Over to you, Lucia.
Thank you very much, Bronwyn, for the introduction. Thank you also for the opportunity to present at this webinar on inclusive WASH workplaces in the Pacific. Last year in August, we had a session on mainstreaming gender into our workplaces. I'd like to think that 1 year on, we have improved not only on the gender statistics in our utilities, but on the workplace policies and practices in our organizations in the Pacific. I also want to reiterate to start off with the importance of data collection and their analysis for informing decisions and policies that we want to develop and monitoring how we are performing over time. This morning, I will present the latest benchmarking data on gender collected last year. And because of the COVID pandemic, we have only just managed to finalize the analysis and put together the report last week. The full report should be available this week, if not today, on our website and on the World Bank IBNet site by, I hope by today or the end of the week. In the next slide, We have just an overview of how this work has developed on gender benchmarking. We started collecting annual gender indicators since 2015 as part of our performance benchmarking survey. And initially, these were just broad indicators. However, in 2019, we expanded the questionnaire to include questions on policies, practices, and procedures, employees in other job grades, etc., training and mentorship programs in utilities, and policies in place in the utility, such as flexible work arrangements, things that are women-friendly. You will see in the next slide some of the overall data that have come out from the 2020 data collection, or the toolkits that were sent out and questionnaires. Overall, in 2020, the BWWA utilities employed 992 women, or 22% of all staff in utilities are women. This represents a 7% increase since 2015. Incidentally, also all staff in COSRE, Department of Transportation and Utilities in FSM are all women. Of the 992 women staff, 34% are either engineers, that represents 20%, or high-level administrators, also 20%. And this represents a 12% increase since 2015. In the next slide, this slide deals with the percentage of staff salary as a percentage of the average salary in utilities. And you will note that I think some of the, well, at least some of the utilities that stand out are Samoa Water Authority and Water PNG, which have equal salary rates for women and men. In Central Yap, which has less than 40%. GOSRE, of course, as I have mentioned, the Department of Transportation in FSM are all women. But notably, I think the women salaries are higher than average due in some of the other countries that have figures above 50%. It's really due to seniority in the utility. There's a bit more detail on this on the next slide on women employment. With 14% of female staff are engineers, and about 70% are in admin and management positions. And there are indicators or presented for some of the utilities that we have. For example, 21 of the 39 women are engineers in the Polynesian Dessau in French Polynesia, 24 out of 64 women engineers in Caledonia Dessau in New Caledonia. And then we have some of the indicators for some of the smaller ones, like Tuvalu, for example, which is headed by a woman. But mostly women are usually accountants, managers, HR managers, and economists. WAF Fiji reports women as regular workers. Perhaps Manasa will speak on that later when he does his presentation next after me. In terms of female-friendly policies in the next slide, that are in place. There are no exclusion in training opportunities that are provided for all staff, meaning all are equally eligible for training. Technical skills training, 100% reported that they do have these available for everybody. And likewise, leadership training, communications training, and only 55% of the utilities that reported have training on harassment policies. An example of these answers in the questionnaire is provided in the next slide of the Water Authority of Fiji training program. And that's just an excerpt from the questionnaire that is given out for utilities to answer that deals with the training program. And they also have an opportunity to list all other trainings that are available for both gender. And these are the answers that Fiji had provided for us. In the next slide, we are touching on the policies that are in place that are female friendly. 100% of the utilities, for example, reported they all have maternity leave from 8 weeks to 120 days. Only 25% of the utilities have paternity leave policies. There is no pay scale discrimination as reported by utilities. And there are no formal female restrictions for vacancies. The reporting of women as regular workers in WAF Fiji, I need to have a better look at what that exactly means, but Manasa can probably help during his presentation. All utilities reported they have gender separate toilets and sanitation facilities. However, nobody reported any baby care rooms or lactation facilities for new mothers. And I think that's about, I think the last slide is a Bronwyn. Yeah, I think that's it from me. Just a brief presentation overall of the data that has been collected. We're very fortunate to have now a working relationship with Melita and ISF, and the questionnaire that will go out with the next toolkits, which will probably we are sending out this week and next week, now that the report of the 2020 data is in place, are basically the same that we have for that we've had before. The ones that ISF wants, except for a couple of questions on governance that are not in our previous questionnaire. So I'm happy to say that that will be going out soon, and we will continue to have gender statistics collected alongside the performance toolkits for our benchmarking survey. But thank you very much, everyone, for your attention. And yes, we hope that we will continue to engage more women in the water sector. I don't think I need to re-emphasize the fact that, to have more policies and in place for women inclusiveness really does add to your performance over time as an organization. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lucia. We do have time now for a few questions, if there are any questions of Lucia. I can see there was some in the chat from Tuvalu about Department of Infrastructure and women involved in that. If there are any other questions for Lucia, please do drop them in the chat. But I don't think we have a bunch of any. Does anyone want to stick their hand up? I'll give everyone a chance for a question now. If we don't have any now, I'm sure people are thinking and processing what you've presented, Lucia, and we'll probably have a chance for further discussion in a minute. I might hand now to the next we'll move on to the next presentation. So let me introduce Manasa Tusulu, who's the Manager, Strategic Planning Unit and Executive Officer, the Institutional Reform Unit at the Water Authority of Fiji. Manasa is he's also been involved with working with WAF since 2012 and has over 9 years experience working in the water sector. He's today leading a team of in-house business analysts and also working with specialists from SMEC towards enhancing and building capacity within WAF in a range of areas, including non-revenue water, liquid trade waste, demand management and catchment management. He's also part of the in-house gender task force to promote gender mainstreaming as a tool to redress inequality within the water and wastewater sector. So I'll hand to you now, Manasa. Thank you. Sorry, you're muted still, Manasa. I need to turn that off.
Thank you.
There you are. We can hear you well.
Thank you for the introduction. Boleh menaka everyone. Just wait for my slide to pop up. Yeah, so we'll just go to the next slide in terms of the contents of my presentation. So I'll just be talking about the journey here in WEF in respect to gender equality. So in terms of the contents of my presentation, I just share a bit on the status of gender in terms of our workforce here in the Water Authority of Fiji. Just briefly touch on the national and WEF commitments in terms of policies and legislations. Briefly touch on the gender policy here in WEF, and then I'll jump into the gender action plan that we have developed with our gender specialist, and more importantly, how to achieve this. Next slide, please. So in terms of our current status, as of 2022, 14% of our workforce are females, and majority are working in the support function, and this is in administration, finance, HR, and so on. Since 2014, 2015, just looking at the figure, the graph on your left, we've basically grown by about 3% from the year 2015 up till 2022. So there's some growth in female workers joining our workforce. So as we speak, we have one of our board members who joined in 2021, female. We've got 2 female executive general managers within the organization. We've got about 8 managers or team leaders within WEF, and we've got about 3 engineers, qualified engineers, female in WEF. And this is an area we are really targeting, or we're trying to grow in terms of our way forward, to grow our female engineers within the workforce. And then I'll talk about that later on. So this is just the status of where we are at in terms of gender in our workforce. Next slide, please. In terms of commitments, this has to be driven probably from the top level. So for us at the national level, under our constitution, talks about gender equality. We also have a 2014 national gender policy, which articulates the commitment of the government towards gender equality. We also have our government 5 to 20-year development plan, which talks about inclusive socioeconomic development, and including, females, equality, gender equality in our programs. In-house, we have a gender policy that basically complements the existing HR policy that we have. And then, I'll move on to the next slide, which talks about in detail what the policy, articulates. So just in terms of our gender, we had started with gender has been in the radar since 2013, 2015, but it picked up momentum in 2019 when we, through an ADB TA, we had a SMEC specialist who joined us, Rosemary, who started the journey for us. So in-house, we have a gender task force. We've got 8 members that are driving the gender action plan for the authority. We've also drafted our gender equality policy, which is yet to be endorsed by the board. And in terms of our 3 priorities that is driving our gender equality, it's talking about high level and inclusive transparent approach to recruitment, advancement and retention within WEF. The second one, encouragement for WEF to be involved in water governance and decision making. Very important, including females in our decision making, within the rural communities and urban. Thirdly, encouraging gender mainstreaming through water and wastewater sector. I won't touch on the detailed plans here, but this is just the broad 3 key priorities for us that is in our policy. Next. So looking at our gender action plan, there's about 22 action plans, but because of time, I'm just highlighting around 9 over here. Probably those that are progressing at the moment, since our journey started in 2019, and then COVID came, and we were stalled for about 2 years, and now we are picking up on our gender action plan again. So I'm just highlighting a few action plan that is probably progressing now. So one, promoting women's employment opportunities and economic security. So one, at least 30% of new roles or additional staff are women. Promote women's employment across higher technical roles. I've spoken about the 3% that we have in-house that we want to grow in the next few years. That's progressing. Thirdly, advertise new project-related jobs with a statement encouraging women to apply. That is yet to start from our HR unit. Secondly, provide training to increase gender sensitivity, knowledge, and skills on gender. We had our specialists in-house, but we are going to be having our gender mainstreaming training around this month, probably later on this month, and that's training 12 in-house trainers on gender sensitivity and mainstreaming in WEF. And then what the idea is for them to train others within the organization. Thirdly is to promote and monitor gender equality principles and practices, and the formulation of gender strategy in-house at the moment for our rural water schemes. If you want to apply for a rural water scheme in WEF, it is mandatory that a water committee is set up to look after the maintenance of the water scheme in our rural communities. But more importantly, within the committee, one female member has to be part of the committee. In Fiji, we know that women value water more than men, so their participation in decision making in the rural communities is very important. So this is one of the practice that we're doing at the moment. Also, WEF allocates sufficient funds and resources to ensure gender is mainstream. This is yet to start. As we speak, we are doing our budgets for the new financial year, and it's a requirement now from a national level that we are doing gender response data, and meaning we need to be allocating funding for gender programs. So moving on, next slide. So number 5 is to support the development of gender responsive WEF recruitment and promotion policies, ensuring that they provide increasing percentage of female staff. So as I've spoken about our current status, we're trying to grow certain areas, and especially in the engineering field. Number 6, promote professional advancement of women staff, ensuring that at least 25% female participants in training on accounting, utility, management, technical, and project sector. I think our CEO from PWW had presented a table on how training is undertaken here in WEF, especially targeting women in leadership roles and technical roles. Number 7, earmark at least 30% of new field positions. We're trying to recruit in technical areas also. So we've got some women that are meter readers in-house, and we want to grow those areas also. Promote WEF attachments to boys and girls at secondary and tertiary level. This is progressing. As we speak, we have our NEC attachees that are attached with the organization. Majority of them are young female that are still in university that have joined the workforce. Number 9, earmark at least 25% of unskilled labor contracts in project-generated infrastructure works for women. So as we speak, we've got a major water treatment plant project on at the moment. So for our subcontractors, we also monitor their recruitment of women that are joining their company. Yeah? So we're promoting that also from our subcontractors in terms of recruitment of female workers. Yeah? Next slide, please. And this is just a table in terms of our targets. In terms of numbers, where we were at in 2019, 2020, and on the last column, our proposed balance. Yeah? So as you see, for current staff, we want to recruit at least about 25% more. In the board, we want to at least have another board member. We only got one. Executive management, we've got 2. We want to have 3. So on the last column are all our targets that we are working towards achieving in the next few years. Yeah? Next slide. So in order to achieve this, for us, these are some of the key things probably that we might need to adopt. And that is integrating gender equality dimension into all aspects of our organizational practice, unlocking potential of men and women. In WEF now, gender inclusion is very important in terms of the projects. So it's not only in-house, but also trying to gather data on the beneficiaries in terms of gender. One of the targets also is we need to monitor is the gender participation or gender benefits in respect to the water projects that we are running. This is probably a big challenge for us, collecting gender disaggregated data from the field. So we're just starting this, and this is probably one of the key things that we need to drive in the next few years, collecting gender disaggregated data. Encouragement for women to be involved in water governance and decision making. So for us, we've started off with the rural water schemes, whereby women are to be part of the water committee that looks after the rural water schemes. Setting clear benchmarks and target indicators to achieve gender equality. I think that I've reflected that in the last table, in the last slide. We need to have clear targets on where you want to get to, and where you want to get to in terms of gender women recruitment. Ensuring gender equality and equality dimensions integrated into programs and projects to achieve required objectives. Recognizing the provision of reliable water supply is a basic human right to all households. That is very important. And the second bullet point, an inclusive and transparent approach to recruitment, advancement and retention within WEF, and encouraging gender mainstreaming through water and wastewater sector. So probably that is just the snapshot on our gender journey here at the Water Authority of Fiji that started off in 2019, came to a halt due to COVID, and we are picking up on that also. I'm just highlighting a few action plans here. I've got about 22 here that I can share with you. And, that basically concludes my presentation this morning. Thank you so much for listening. Vinaka.
Thank you so much, Manasa. I think we have a Vinaka slide there. So Vinaka, to you as well.
Yes. Thank you.
Now, we'll just move on to the next presentation. I think we've got a good flow. There are some good questions coming up in the chat there. We could go to those now. I think there is one here that is directly to you, Manasa, which is how is WAF ensuring women know about work opportunities, especially for field-based roles and unskilled labour contracts? So you did mention about recruitment processes. So just trying to explore that, how that's being pursued a little bit more.
What we got in our plans also, we are putting together videos of our technical, of our engineers, female engineers, and we are putting it up on our social media page to try and promote, that, women can also join a very male-dominated organization like ours. So we're using the social media platform, and we had plans to visit the universities to promote females to also join our organization. So for that, our people are there during the day, university open days, to discuss employment opportunities for females in our organization. So those are the two areas that we are targeting at the moment.
Okay, great. Thanks, Manasa. I hope that answers your question, Kate. I think we will keep going. I know there will be probably some really good discussion between our speakers later on. But let me now introduce Melita Grant. So Melita Grant is the Research Director at Institute for Sustainable Futures, University of Technology, Sydney. I've had the pleasure of working with Melita over many years through the Australian WASH Reference Group. Melita specialises in water sanitation hygiene, WASH, and integrated water resources management in international development, with a particular focus on inclusion. And she's worked across government, university, and civil society sectors. So this project that she's presenting today is a research project and builds on a number of research projects she's worked on gender and social inclusion in WASH, including on rural piped water schemes in Cambodia and Vietnam, and also evaluating programs in Timor-Leste. I'll hand to you now, Melita, and stop sharing my screen.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Bronwyn. And yes, I'm going to be sharing the slides for my piece, because it's going to include a little bit of a tour of the tools that Bronwyn mentioned I'm going to be sharing with you today. But just to start with, I'm just going to show you this little presentation. I'm so happy to be presenting after Lucia and Manasa, because they've already mentioned quite a few of the key points that I'm going to be talking about. And you'll see that some of the tools and the highlights that they've identified around the importance of data and gathering data, the importance of setting up a task force and a group that ensures that the plans and the policies are kept on track and are doing monitoring evaluation around them. And also work around the recruitment that Manasa just talked about, and tapping into youth and to support young people emerging as engineers, but also other roles in the water sector. So lots of that is covered in this, but you'll also see that I've got some nice frameworks to share with you. This is work that has been funded by the Water for Women Fund, which is an initiative of the Australian government. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard about different WASH projects in the region funded by Water for Women. And it also is supported by the Equal Aqua initiative from the World Bank. I'll mention some of the tools that they've got at the end of my presentation. Okay, just moving on. This is a framework that we use as the overarching piece for the guidance document and the database that I'm going to be sharing with you today. And it looks at the key phases or stages in a career. You've got the attraction. I'm just going to move to the second box here, which is called attraction. And that means, how do we attract people to our sector, and diversity of people? So men, women, boys and girls, people with disabilities, sexual gender minorities. How do we make our sector really attractive to a broad range of people? The next one is around recruitment, and Manasa just talked about some of those strategies of having quotas and targets, but also ensuring our recruitment processes are really open and supportive, and our unconscious bias is addressed in those processes. And then this next one in yellow, the retention phase. We've got formal and informal dynamics in our workplaces, which can make it easier or harder for people to stay in their jobs when they become parents, for instance, but also to move up the ladder. And the advancement in orange there is around moving up the ladder, progressing your career, and what opportunities are there for different types of people, different roles, different genders. Going right back to the start here, the diagnosis phase in dark green, that's what Lucia was talking about, the benchmarking, the understanding your data, collecting data, but also really understanding it and analysing it and using it. So before jumping into an initiative of, oh, we might want to do this, we might want to do that, diagnosing your particular organisation around its strengths and its weaknesses, and some of the key points that you can work on to increase diversity within your organisation. So that's the spectrum that we use in the guidance note and the database that I'm going to show you. And underpinning all of this, you can see the words societal expectations there. And that's really about acknowledging that there's a lot of cultural and political and economic and historical factors that have led to our sector and our society more broadly not being reflective of of all types of people and being skewed in certain ways, and certain roles being accepted for certain people and not for others. So there's a lot of cultural and political factors that sit under that. So it's really also acknowledging that that influences us and our organisations, and what can we do as individuals and organisations to start to shift that or to question it and challenge it in our society at large. Okay, so that's the framework. And as I said, we've created a guidance document that is built on research that we conducted in the region for several years. And we'd love to augment this document with more examples from the Pacific. And that's partly the work that we're doing with Lucia and PWWA, is to gather some more examples of the good work you're doing to be able to infuse these outputs or information resources with more examples from the Pacific. Now I'm going to show you this database. So it really is essentially an Excel spreadsheet, but it's got 180 activities to support inclusive workplaces. And I'm going to give you a little tour of it, but essentially you can download it from this website. I'll pop this in the chat in a minute. And I'm just going to show you how that works. So we just go over here to our browser, and as I said, as soon as I finish talking, I'll put this link in the chat. And you can see here that it gives a bit of a, oh, is this still working, sharing screen? Can you see the website now?
It's still on the PowerPoint, Melissa.
Yeah,
That's right, yes, sorry. I chose the option of sharing just the, okay, here we go, sorry. Okay, so you're on the website now?
Yes, all good.
Thank you. And so you can see there's an intro to the resources and the, as you can see, this framework here. And then the guidance document is here on the left, and that's a PDF, so you can click on that. And then the database here is on the right. So you just go to this blue download button, and it opens up to an Excel spreadsheet, which enables you at the beginning, gives you a few instructions, but it enables you to sort on the framework stages I just talked through of the career phases. And it also enables you to sort around the area of inclusion. So whether it's disability inclusion, you're particularly interested in knowing about some actions that other water utilities and other water sector organisations have put in place. Gender equality, Indigenous peoples, intersectionality, which is looking at a number of factors simultaneously, race, religion, cultural diversity, and sexual gender minorities. So these are some little some little instructions, and you go to the activity page itself. And for instance, Manasa talked about recruitment policies. And so if you wanted to know, oh, what other organisations are working on recruitment? And as I said, this is very much tailored to the water sector. So almost all the examples in the database are from different types of water-related organisations. So you could click on recruitment, and then that will bring up all of the examples that we've found from various documents and websites, and give you the name of the organisation and then a link to where we found that particular example of what they're doing.
Sorry, Melissa, are you clicking through the database as you're talking? Because we can only see the web page at the moment with a flat screen.
Yes, okay. Thank you for letting me know. So we'll try that again. Okay, so can you see the page now?
Yep, now we can see the Excel database. Yep.
Yeah, sorry. So yes, it's, as I said, I just clicked on the recruitment button there, and it's come up with the various recruitment related activities. So some of them involve looking at the language of your job ads and making them less masculine as such. There's examples in this database of organisations that have compared different types of advertisements and who they've attracted to the recruitment process just by shifting the language, for instance. So these are all here. So these are all examples. And you also might want to look at examples specific to attracting young people to our sector. And there's everything from career talks, bring your daughter to work days, presenting at career fairs and mentoring younger women in your organisation, international exchange programs. So all of this is here in those different categories. So I hope that that gives you a sense of the database and the guidance note. And just to finish, I'm going to show you also a couple of other, I've just popped the link in the chat. Just to finish, I'm going to show you a couple of other resources that the Equal Aqua initiative has available to you. Okay, won't be long. Thanks for bearing with all my screen sharing today. Okay, so we're back to here. And as I said, the Equal Aqua initiative has a similar benchmarking process to what Lucia has just presented and is connected because it's also World Bank. And they've looked globally at gender parity, so how many men and women in organisations and what sort of roles and what kind of pay level, etc. So that's all there. There is a little bit in there as well, similar to your benchmarking report around facilities like parenting facilities and bathrooms, that sort of thing. So this is a global survey, and you could even look at this and compare your organisations with what this Equal Aqua has found globally. And then they've got this report which also outlines the importance and a lot of examples, which we've pulled into the database from utilities all around the world. It is very water utility focused, so really significantly relevant to this sector, and examples from all around the world, but again, not a lot from the Pacific. So this webinar and the work we're doing with the PWWA and yourselves is a really great opportunity for us to bring the Pacific into this particular global initiative and highlight what you're doing, the great examples of work that Manasa and now Michelle are about to present. And also, if you have any activities that you'd like me to add to the database, I'm very, very happy to. And my email is there on the screen, and also anyone from this organising committee, Bronwyn and Dean and Maria, who you all know, and Kate, all of them have contacts with me. So if you want to send your gender action plans or your examples of work that you're doing to shift things and improve things in your organisations, then I can add them to the database, and that will come up for other people to see and be inspired by. So thank you very much. And I'll just pause there for a couple of minutes and ask if there's any questions.
I can see you've got some clapping hands, some applause.
That's nice. Thank you.
I can't see any questions direct to you as yet in the chat.
Okay.
I'm sure people are still processing.
Yes, it was quite a whirlwind tour. And once you've had a chance to check out the resources, I hope they'll feel useful to you and not overwhelming. The idea is, rather than every organisation needing to go and find examples of good work, it's a one-stop shop. So yeah, as I said, let's get more examples from the Pacific in there. That will make it much more global in its nature. Okay, well, given we can chat about any questions later on because we still have time for them. It's my sincere pleasure to introduce Michelle now, who's going to present from Solomon Water. And Michelle Malua is Solomon Water's Head of Corporate Services. She joined Solomon Water in 2018 as Communications Coordinator and took up Head of Corporate Service in 2020. Michelle has over 10 years of experience in the human resources management space, having worked in a number of Solomon Islands government ministries and telecommunication companies, including B Mobile Limited, before joining Solomon Water. And Michelle has a degree in Bachelor of Arts in Public Administration and Banking and Finance, and has completed a Master's in Business Administration from the University of the South Pacific last year. Very warm welcome, Michelle, and thank you for being part of today's webinar. Over to you.
Thank you, Melinda, for that introduction, and thank you also for the opportunity to present in this webinar. So thank you very much. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I think Melinda has already done the introduction. So I'm presenting on behalf of Solomon Water. So as part of the presentation, I'll be just doing a brief background on Solomon Water, and then I'll discuss the activities that Solomon Water has been participating in terms in the gender space. So first of all, Solomon Water is a state-owned enterprise, and we're the only water company that provides water services in Solomon Islands. We provide water and wastewater services in Honiara and our other 3 urban centers. Currently, Solomon Water, we have about 14,000 customers in total. And in terms of the workforce, we now have more than 200 staff that are now employed in the organization, which is about 60% increase over the past 5 years. So next slide, please. Now, so Solomon Water, our vision is safe water for a healthy nation. And in achieving this vision, we ensure we provide reliable and safe water and sewage services to our customers, and working in partnership with our communities as we minimize the social and environmental impacts of our activities. So that's just briefly a background on the vision and the mission of our organization. Next slide. So in setting the scene, we believe as an organization, we build a working culture that promotes and maintains respectful and supportive workplace for all Solomon Water employees. So in 2017, as an organization, we have developed a Solomon Water Way. So this sets the scene in terms of the culture that we are driving. So there are 90 Solomon Water Way, which we advocate in the organization. And that's basically the key ones: be on time, having respect and support for each other, acknowledge good work, we speak out against bad behavior, work hard to deliver great results, we strive to achieve customer expectation, and we plan ahead. So basically, this is the Solomon Water Way in which we believe we build a working culture that promotes respect and supportive workplace for our employees. So on to the next slide. I will now go on to women in Solomon Water. So we promote the leadership in women for Solomon Water. As of end of last month, we now have about 50 female women who are employed in the organization. So that's 50 out of 228 employees in total. In terms of the levels, out of the 50 female ladies, there are about 12 that are at leadership level. So we have 7 female who are team leaders, 4 at coordinator level, and 1 at the executive position. And when we look at the technical role, we only have about 8 who are in the technical positions, and mostly the graduate trainees, the operations and technical staff. That makes up about only 8, while the 42 are office-based. So over the years, we could see that there's only about 1% that has increased compared to 2017, although we have increased in terms of workforce for about 60% since 2017. So that's just a bit about women in Solomon Water. Next slide. So with Solomon Water, we have participated in a number of programs under gender equality. For the purpose of the presentation today, I'll be speaking mainly on 2 programs that we have actually rolled out. So, and participated in. The first one is called Wakamere Commitment to Action. So Wakamere in English, it means she works. So this was a program launched in July 2017, and it was supported and funded by the government and Australia government, New Zealand IFC, and supported under the Chamber of Commerce. So what this program, the commitment was is to improve business outcomes in Solomon Islands workplace gender equality. And under this program, 15 of the big companies in Solomon Islands participated in this commitment to action, which was a platform where we, as a country, we had the organizations, a platform we could all participate in, and also learning from each other as well. So under this program, there were actually 3 commitments. One is promoting women in leadership, building respect, supportive workplaces, and increasing women opportunities for women in jobs traditionally held by men. So under this commitment to action, Solomon Water, we participated in building respect and supportive workplace category. What we did under this space was it was more on raising the awareness, because back then it was a new concept to us as well. So it was more in raising the awareness across the organization about gender equality. And also, we also developed policies in domestic violence, and how we also trained DV contacts, just raising awareness across the organization. And also we had, there were trainings in regards to driver's trainings, where we sent 9 female officers to also participate in that program. So these were just some of the programs that we participated in terms of the gender space. But I guess it was more on the raising the awareness on gender equality at that stage. Apart from that, we have had workshops, which we have also got staff to participate in, which was very productive session, I would say, because we actually raised the awareness at staff at managerial level and supervisory as well as the general staff in the field. So that was generally a bit about the Wakamere Commitment to Action, which we participated in 2017 to 2019. Next slide, please. So the other gender program we are currently doing at the moment is we have a gender action plan. So Solomon Water, as part of our 30-year strategic plan, we have a project under that. It's called Urban Water Sanitation and Sector Program, which is funded by ADB, World Bank, and EU. So under that program, there are targets and commitments that we as an organization need to achieve over the period of the project. So out of these targets, we have in the WASH space, we need to ensure that 50% of our trainings target female. And so we have staff across the organization, not only female, but male as well. We're doing awareness sessions at the moment, and we're rolling that out in partnership with a service provider. It's called Family Support Center. So they actually provide us the support in raising the awareness across the organization, and also supporting our contractors as well in that space. In terms of community awareness, yes, we do have targets for the baseline surveys. For WASH, we ensure that 50% of women participate in these surveys, as well as focus group discussions. And I think that the shift that has happened for us is in terms of collecting data. I think we've been used to just collecting everything together when we come to community awareness, but we've now set up Streamline in a way that we separate, we record information to have females separate from males, so we could actually see the data and ensure that we meet the targets based on our gender action plan. So these are a few of the activities that Solomon Water is currently engaging in. But as part of these activities, we also do have quarterly monitoring, evaluation, and reporting that is done semi-annual. So this is, I think it's a good way in terms of how we track based on the targets that we have. It's something new that we have gone into, but I think we've also been supported by TAs under this program. So it has helped us a lot in rolling this out. So that's pretty much two of the programs that we have been engaging in the gender space. And next slide, please. So we continue to try to increase the participation and leadership opportunities for women. I think across the organization, we continue to look at the gender capacity, and we also rely on like our other Pacific countries, Fiji and other countries, to learn on how we could also apply the best practices at our workplace as well. And yes, and we also, I think strategy or policy-wise, I think it's important that we set the strategy as we advocate to increase the participation of women and leadership opportunities for women at the workplace. And I think that's pretty much a bit on what Solomon Water is doing at the moment. And we're really happy to also be part to be sharing the tools that will help us as we improve in that space. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Michelle. That was fantastic and great to hear what you're doing within your organisation and also in your programs. So I'd just like to ask everybody to feel free to think about any questions that they have for Michelle and Manasa. And while people are thinking of questions, I'm wondering, Michelle, if you could talk a bit more about in detail about the partnership that you have developed with the local organisation in the delivery of your program around the issues of safety and family planning and violence against women, etc. That partnership sounds really interesting. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Thank you, Melita. Yes, so we have, so in the HR, in the organization, people come to HR to think that we could solve the issues that they have. So we've gone into partnering up with Family Support Center, and that's a local NGO that provides, they have well-trained counselors or trainers that actually raise awareness, and they support us in training or raising the awareness to staff across when we talk about gender equality. But on that note as well, we have come up with doing referrals as well. So there's a network of contacts that if there's anything related to gender or sensitivity around that space, we do referrals for staff. So we quarterly ensure that those contacts are made available through our newsletters and all that for staff. But the family support, it started, our center has supported us since last year, and just providing trainings in smaller groups. It's a 1.5-day session and we've actually separated female from men. So the female have their own sessions, while the men also have their separate sessions as well. And we almost 40%, we're yet to complete 60% of the program, which we expect to roll it out this year and next year. So that's just a bit our partnership with Family Support Center.
Thank you so much for explaining that. And the trainees, the people that are being trained, that's the staff as well as the people involved in the delivery of the project, is it? Or is it community members? If you could just talk a little bit about that.
Yes, for the training, it's mainly the staff from the Family Support Center. They usually do the training. Although we have a TA that supports us. So based on some of the surveys that are done, we have consultations with the partners before we actually roll out these programs. So
great. Yeah. Thank you so much, Michelle. I know there's just a couple of aspects that you talked about. We have, I think, a couple of questions coming into the chat. Did anyone want to put their hand up at this point? You can either put your hand up physically or with the icon to ask a question to any of our speakers. Thomas, thank you very much. The floor is yours. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Melita. I just had two questions. One being for Melita, the first, and the second for Michelle. Sorry, Melita, in your presentation, you mentioned about masculine questions, like how like for recruitment, questions don't seem too masculine. If you can just elaborate more on that. And my second question to Michelle was, she mentioned the 8 technical staff basically being graduate trainees. What are their aims? Is it to full employment for the graduate trainees into the utility, or is it like a quota whereby you'll only take a certain amount of graduate trainees that are females? Or do they need to like meet the requirements before they become the graduate engineers or permanent staff? Those are my two questions. Thank you.
Great questions, Thomas. Thank you. Okay, I'll just quickly answer the first one. And I can provide a lot more detail from the organisation that did the analysis of the LinkedIn posts. But essentially, it's when job advertisements are written around concepts like it's a fast-paced environment and success is guaranteed, and you need to be very task-oriented and achievement-oriented. Those sorts of concepts, not necessarily those exact words, can make some people feel, oh, maybe I'm not up to the job, or maybe that won't work with my family commitments, or that sort of thing, and oh, maybe I won't apply. Whereas if it's about, do you want to be part of a team that supports each other to deliver programs that are for the benefit of the community, and you have direct engagement with stakeholders, and those sorts of more relationship, team-oriented concepts, if that's built into the way in which a job advertisement is explained, then some people, and this study shows that women can visualize themselves more in that type of a role. So I'm not giving the most perfect examples of the words, but I can follow up with exact examples if you like. But yeah, you get the gist. Yeah, that sort of way in which you orient the role and show that it is more about community and working with each other and a supportive environment, and also communication skills, things that women often have very high. I know that's a very massive generalization, but high levels of communication skills, ensuring that they're recognised and wanted as much as the technical skills. So thank you. And Michelle, what about the second question?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. So yes, so we have 8 female staff who are currently, as I mentioned, in the operations team. And out of them, 3 are actually the graduate trainees, and the plan we have in recruiting them is to make them to become permanent. They're part of the program to make them permanent. So they're just going through the graduate trainee program and just getting them to rotate across the organization to understand the operations and all that. And so they're supporting us in the project management unit as we roll out our key infrastructure programs. So they will eventually become permanent staff. And apart from these 3, we have machine operators, we have lab technicians, so they make up the female component in the operations space. Yeah. Hope that clears your question, Thomas.
Yes, that did. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Michelle. And over to you, Bronwyn.
Thank you. Yeah, I have some questions. I think there were some common themes and messages that came up from our presentations and our presenters. And I just wanted to ask about, I mean, I guess a presumption from a lot of this work is that there are benefits to having a greater diversity in the workforce and in leadership positions. And you mentioned that briefly at the end, Lucia. I just wonder if we could hear from WAF and PWW and also Solomon Water about what you are seeing or hope to see in terms of benefits from increasing diversity in the workplace. Thank you.
I can make a start, Bronwyn, on that. I think the responses that we have received from informal discussions with some of the CEO leaders, especially the women who have been CEOs in the past in utilities, is that that generally having inclusive policies and even having women, you know, as part of an organization, encourages a bit more of a caring nature for communities. You know, to have those sort of policies in place, and I think that probably comes from having women engineers who are technical, but they're women in that way. They're probably more nurturing, and you know, there are men that are like that, but let's face it, I think Manasseh's smiling, but I think women do generally have a more nurturing sort of you know you know, they're just more nurturing, and therefore are more careful with how the programs in an organization impacts on communities and on women. That's just informally from conversations that we've had. But of course, you know, over time, there's also been, at least from my own past experience, that it was one factor that was very important. It was important to have women in your executive positions, because they really do create that balance for the organization of providing that women's touch, so to speak. As a former CEO of an organization that was, when I started, there was only probably 2% women in the executive. That was the Ministry for Revenue and Customs, which is basically a male organization. You know, it's male dominated. It has a, you know, a men's club sort of atmosphere worldwide. You know, the changes over time in the 6 years that I was in that particular organization. It was just wonderful to see how the men also change their attitudes. But that's the really hard part of this whole inclusivity, gender inclusivity process, is the behavioral change of people, and that doesn't come overnight. That comes with time. And you know, Melita was talking about, you know, the inputting into hiring processes, the language, the type of language that encourages women. That's on paper, yes, that's what we want. But then the recruitment people may not have that change in attitude, you know. You know, some people will just wipe out, even if that's there on paper, they will just exclude somebody simply because they're a woman, because they feel that this is a male job. You know, I mean, like in the organization where I was at, you know, women are in our culture, is they're not supposed to be out at night doing shift work. You know, because it's just not the thing. That's what people think. But, you know, with the positive discussions and consultations over time, there will be changes in attitudes and the way people see things and in behavior. And I think that's something that we should pay attention to. And, you know, it's good to collect the data, analyze it, but what comes after that, you know, the policies that are in place, as Manasseh and Michelle have spoken about, that's important. But also, you should have in that practical exercise that you do, look at the behavioral changes and see what you can do to change people's behavior towards a more inclusive culture in your organizations. Thank you.
Yeah, Lucia. Probably from where I'll just add on. I totally agree with Lucia, but I think it's a proven fact that women value water more than men. So including them in decision making and governance is probably a key thing, and that's included in our policy and the practice that I've shared with you, including them in the water committee as a mandatory requirement or criteria for some of our rural water schemes. That is very important. So from our end, including women in governance and decision making for a water utility is a no-brainer. So probably I'll put it that way from Fiji standard. Yeah, probably that's from Fiji. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, so my comments on that is that in terms of gender is quite a sensitive issue, like from a cultural setting, like we said, it was back when how people were raised and all that. So it's a challenge when you try to roll it out in the workplace. But we've seen improvements over time, but it all comes with raising the awareness. And but it's important that the inclusions happen for gender in the workplace. It's very important, like when we go out and do the consultation awarenesses, we set the mandates, like my colleague Manasseh said. When the mandate is there, you're forced to, when you go out to the community, we said, okay, we need the women to be part of the session, and we actually have to shift the time that's convenient for them. So we choose a time maybe before 12 o'clock or 10 o'clock for them to be able to participate in these programs. So I guess for Solomon Water, it's only through the gender action plan that was based on the ADB requirements. And it sort of pushed us to ensure we meet that target, but it was managing the communications around it when we engaged in the community. So that was basically in terms of community awareness. But coming back to the workplace sector, I think it's very important, like Lucia had mentioned in terms of setting the behavior of people, is how we actually go on and we manage that at a workplace level. But I can say from Solomon Water, when I look at 2017 and now 2022, with the tools that have supported us in that space, we have managed to also got some understanding, good findings also in the current partnership with family support when they conduct sessions separately by men. So it's just that space that we're growing in that space, but probably over time, but behavior becomes a challenge also in that space. So that's just my comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you all. Melita, I wondered if you had any insights from the research as well on that, like what are the benefits of greater diversity in the workplace? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. At the beginning of the guidance document, we talk about that a lot from a number of angles. You've got literature that talks about how organisations just run better and work better and make more money and are more effective with a more diverse leadership and also a diverse workforce. So there's more sort of instrumental type findings, which is well documented, and you can just see from organisations' bottom line that they do better with a greater diversity, through to commitments to the Sustainable Development Goals, and we've committed to working on integrated elements of sustainability. So gender equality, inclusion just naturally is part of delivering a safe and sustainable water supply. And then again, around the reflection on the community, the diverse community, and our organisations needing to reflect those that we serve. And in order for that to happen, we need to do exactly what all of our speakers have so well articulated, which is change slowly from within and train ourselves and raise awareness. The behaviour changes are very subtle, but they need to be supported because the norms or the ways in which we're accustomed to behaving and thinking and expecting and just you know, just their expectations around people's roles. It's very deeply embedded. So that concentrated support for training and changing and bringing men into the, not only into the conversation, but having leadership. We've seen Manasa today talk so openly and passionately about this area of work. That's profoundly influential to have men leading in this space as well. But the benefits are numerous, especially in the water sanitation space, where you want to be delivering services that do reach the whole community and are appropriate and are sustainable for the whole community. So our organisations need to mirror that. Thanks, Bronwyn.
Thanks, Melita. And there's a question now in the chat. I don't know if you had a chance to check it, Melita. It says, it's asking, it's from Anne Kautu. Did you want to ask your question out loud, Anne? If you're still reaching for the mute button, I can read it.
Oh yes, I can see the behavioural change programs.
Yeah. Hi everyone, and thank you for the very informative presentation. My interest, I know Michelle has mentioned a few of the programs that they've implemented. I'm more interested in the behavioral change. I know there might be more programs that have worked in your individual countries or organizations that we can use in Kiribati. Yeah, we still have that problem trying to change behavior within a male-dominated organization as our workplace here. Thanks. It's just interested to know if you can share sample programs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Look, I know that there are lots of examples in the database for, it depends who you're trying to change, isn't it? Is it CEOs? Is it the middle management? Is it the staff? Is it the community? If it comes to looking at that leadership group and you're trying to support them to become more enthusiastic and supportive for these kinds of approaches that our leading organisations like Solomon and Water Authority Fiji done, then certainly leading by example and showing that this other water utility is doing this work and look how successful they're being. So pointing to leaders in the sector can be really helpful. And also finding your allies and working with them to build up an appropriate program for your sort of organisation. So it might be including some champions in that middle management level and then them talking to the CEO and trying to get that buy-in from the top. But getting buy-in from the top is proven in literature to be a very, very powerful factor with all of this. But yeah, speaking to leaders on this panel, I wonder if you have any other insights about behaviour changes within your organisation.
Lucia, did you have any specific examples? Oh, Manasa, you've unmuted. Do you have some examples of behaviour change progress? And I'm afraid, Thomas, that will have to be our last question before we'll let Manasa speak to this, and then we'll be out of time. Sorry.
Yeah, probably when you're talking about behavioural change, you need to start with the leaders. You know, it starts with your leaders. You know, for us, it's been I've highlighted the national commitment to it. So for us in our organisation, you know, showing that, you know, our female, you know, potential leaders in water utilities back, you know, we started in 2010, but this is the first time, you know, since last year we had a board member, which is a female. Before we did not have general managers, female, so now we have two. You know, it starts from the top. The commitment needs to start from the top. And then we, of course, with the trainers that we'll be doing in around later this month, you know, we'll drive that, you know, but it starts from the top in terms of behavioral change. And probably that's probably my, you know, 2 cents in terms of how you drive behavioral change towards, you know, gender sensitivity or mainstreaming. Yeah? Vinaka, thank you.
Thank you so much, Manasa. I think that's a nice point to end on. And I want to just take this opportunity to thank our speakers again, Melita, Manasa, Lucia, and Michelle, for your fascinating presentations today. Now, we do like to take this opportunity to take a group photo, if that's okay with everybody. So if everyone who's online would be able to turn on their camera so we can see your smiling faces while ADB, someone from our team, does some screen grabs.
If you could stop,
Stop
sharing your screen.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah, that would help.
We have a couple of pages of faces, so that's great. Let me know when you're finished, Maria.
I think Lass is doing it,
Oh,
but
Lass
I'm
is
also
doing
taking
honours.
some as well in case.
Okay.
I think we're okay.
We're good? Okay, lovely. Looks great. Maria, do you want to take this opportunity for that announcement that you wanted to make?
Thank you. So hi everyone, thank you so much for coming to this webinar. ADB is excited to announce that we are just entering into a partnership with UNESCO World Water Assessment Program. So what this means is our Pacific WASH TA will be working with UNESCO to support Pacific utilities to undertake a capacity development program, and we're specifically focusing on gender, water resources, and climate change. So the partnership is going to have two phases. The first is training and introducing participants to the UNESCO toolkit on water and gender. And then the second phase, we're going to take the highly engaged and highly committed training participants from that first phase and then specifically tailor support to the utilities' interests and needs in regards to these focus areas. So this is a perfect opportunity for utilities at any stage of their gender mainstreaming journey, and the Pacific WASH TA is fully committed to supporting tailored support so that you can sustain these changes into the future. So if this sounds like something that is of interest to you and your utility, please reach out to the TA. You'll be well familiar with us now, including myself, Vivian, Carl, Bronwyn, Dean, Kate, and Suzanne. We'll also be sending out further information on this a bit later, so please look out for that. We'll be looking for training participants. So thank you very much, and I'll hand back to Bronwyn.
Thanks, Maria. So, yep, we're at the close of a very fascinating session. Thanks again to our speakers and also to all of the TA team that's been supporting and making this webinar possible today. The slides and video of this session will be available online. We hope you can share these resources and look back on them again if you want to check any of those figures or those ideas that have been shared. Many thanks, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. The next topic for the next webinar will be hygiene behaviour change, which was one of the questions that came up today. So we hope you can join us for that. All the best. Thanks, and see you next time.
Mother.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.